Well, when is the exact right time to buy a house? Should you buy a house right now or should you wait until market conditions improve? This is a topic of conversation that is always interesting. And today we're going to be talking about this with our very special guest, Mike Arias, on The Brian Hirsch Show. What is up? Good afternoon, wherever you may be. So glad to have you on today's edition of The Brian Hirsch Show. Driving in your car, sitting in your couch, wherever you are watching or listening today, we're delighted to have you wherever you may be. So, this is today we're going to be talking about something that seems to never get old. I've literally sold hundreds and hundreds of homes. I've been selling real estate, been a top agent in our market for over 10 years. And I can go back 10 years ago, and we had these conversations back then when the median sale price was, $150,000. People still, showing reticence and a reluctance to buy their home. And anybody back 10 years ago that, decided that they were going to wait until the market conditions improve before they bought their house are, of course, kicking themselves now. So, what is the criteria? What is the data that you should be using to educate yourself so as to make an informed decision on when to make your purchase, when to make that move in the real estate market? Well, today we're bringing on perhaps the preeminent expert as it relates to the housing market and these kinds of numbers, going to help educate us and inform us. I would like everybody to please welcome today to today's edition of our show, Mr. Mike Arias. What is up, my brother?
Hey, good to be back on the show. It's been a few months,
It
and I
has
love
been a
coming
few
on
months.
this thing all the time.
Yeah, it would be interesting to pull up the show from a few months ago and see if the dialogue we had back then, our forecast, and what we thought would happen over the next quarter held true.
Yeah, yeah, we'll have to revisit that for sure. I'd like to see that myself.
Right.
but but I mean, shoot, everything that we see, these trends. That's what, like I said, I think we talked about it before. The trends don't happen overnight, right? They take a little bit of time to happen. As we saw the inventory trending down or trending upwards, so the forecasts are it's not like the stock market where you wake up and the whole world came apart. It takes a little bit more time in the real estate gig.
Sure. So, you have a sphere of influence and people that you talk to on a week to week and month to month basis. And you and I, in our kind of pre show prep, we talked about this. This is a conversation. I mean, it's a question that I literally have probably every week, whether it's out in public or at church or on the golf course, wherever I am. And that is, is now the right time? What I hear from people is we're going to wait a little bit until either what my favorite one is until the market crashes,
Yeah.
or they'll say until the rates come down. So talk to us about, you have these conversations as well?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, it happens all the time. I have people calling me all the time. Here's what we're thinking. What do you think? This, that, and the other. And like I tell everybody, I said, listen, the best time to buy is never. Just rent with your parents as long as you can. Don't ever move out. Stay there. That's the best deal, especially if they're not charging you your rent. Don't leave. That's the number one thing. I tried
Yeah,
to
but
stay as long as I could. I think
it's costing you in a whole lot of other ways
yeah,
to do
yeah,
that.
yeah. They could put
Man,
me out when I was about 22 years old, so I ended up building my first house when I was 22. So I ended up moving up. But hey, I hung in there as long as I could.
yes, sir. Failure to launch, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it wasn't didn't last forever. But first of all, let's talk about what's going on right now, currently. Like, the restriction of inventory is big, right? And people need to recognize that and realize that the restriction of inventory is happening. It was just last year, 6 months ago, when inventory was rising, and we're going, oh shoot, what's going on? Inventory starting to come up. Prices were starting to settle down. And remember, everybody, along with Zillow, Truly, Realtor.com, all these online sites, they lag behind real time. So does the general public, let's say. They lag behind real time. They still think that prices are going to come down. They still think inventory is up unless you're actually shopping for inventory. Now you'll know there is nothing available, and you do have to offer over ask price for the majority of the inventory that's out there. So why are sellers not selling? Let's talk about that first. And sellers are not selling because they're coming off of a historic interest rate. The average interest rate is about 3.5%. The average interest rate today is probably 6.5%, maybe closer to 7. So for these people to trade up, to sell your home and get out of that 3.5% interest rate, to go to that 7% interest rate, for a lot of people, it doesn't make sense. They just don't want to do that. And they don't want to put in all of their equity that they just made on this house they just sold. Because at that interest rate today, their payment's going to be thousands of dollars higher, right? And they're going to get rid of all their equity. So it just doesn't make sense. Until we can get that gap to narrow, then we're going to get more activity. But let's talk about the activity today. The activity today, the prices are starting to rise again because we have this restricted inventory. As long as we have restricted inventory, there's not going to be no deals to be had anytime soon. And we know that because we continue to see this inventory deteriorate. It keeps getting lower and lower and lower. Supply and demand always tells us, hey, with low supply and higher demand, prices are going to rise. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing these prices really jump up right now. So with that, what are these guys forecasting? And that's what I was just talking about pre-show here. Chapman University, I think we talked about it your last show too. These guys are the most accurate forecasters of the GDP in the nation. These guys, they have the data. They've been forecasting for I think over 40 years, and their data goes back pretty far as well. But what these guys predict, and those couple graphs I showed you too, is they predict these interest rates. This 30-year fixed mortgage rate is going to start to finally come down beginning of actually this third quarter. They believe this third quarter is going to start to happen. Fourth quarter definitely. And with that, they show that other graph is the affordability. The affordability is going to start to rise. So what does that mean that we have low inventory today? If we have low inventory today and it gets more affordable, only one thing can happen is these prices have to rise if more buyers can enter the market. So when's the best time to buy? Before everybody else does. Yeah, it's going to cost you a little bit more right now. But according to what these guys are forecasting, from Barry Habib to the Chapman University guys, all these guys are predicting this interest rate to start to reverse here. And if that's the case, more buyers come into the market, inventory gets restricted even more, prices go up. So if you could get into a home today at a little bit higher interest rate, we can refi later, right? We can refi later because there's probably 99.9% chance there's going to be equity probably in the next 6 to 12 months if more buyers can afford to buy homes. You know, we look at that foreclosure data. There is no foreclosures happening. And for this market to come apart, we need foreclosures to happen. We need distressed sales. And with no distressed sales, we cannot have the housing prices fall anywhere near that they felt, how drastic they fell last time. And that's what everybody's in everybody's head still. It's in everybody's head that these prices are going to deteriorate 60, 70% like they did last time. That's crazy.
Well, I think there's a couple of things here. So I think the reason, well, people tend to have kind of a negative disposition anyway,
Right.
just across the board. They just have that apprehension about, the world's going to come apart and the sky is going to fall.
Right.
I think people it's just our nature. But I've thought about this, about why would somebody wait to, assuming that they could buy a house.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other factors, right? You got to get your credit together, you got to get your finances together, and be ready to buy a house. But assuming that somebody is ready, they've got the cash, the credit, and the income to buy, they could buy today. Why they would wait to buy later? And there's literally, Mike, as I see it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there's only one reason why you would wait. And that is if you think, based on the data, that pricing is going to soften.
Yeah.
And is there anything in the data that would suggest that pricing is going to soften?
No, and that's the thing. Back to the inventory. If we saw inventory rising like we did 8 months ago, 12 months ago, we saw inventory start to rise. And it was rising fast. I mean, shoot, we put on 1,000 homes in like 6 months. It was crazy how many homes started hitting the market. If we started seeing that, for sure, I would hold off. I would not buy anything because we know with a lot of inventory, prices are going to have to soften. There's no doubt about it. But with ultra low inventory, again, like we had 2 years ago, it's happening all over again because and the bottom line is because these sellers don't want to put their homes on the market. If there was equity there or more equity there or a better interest rate, if those two things happen, we would get more inventory. And that's not the case. We don't have that. They don't have, even though they're still going to get a good amount of equity, we don't have a great interest rate for those sellers to sell. The people that are selling today have to sell. The people that are buying today have to buy. It's not the people that want to sell or the people that want to buy. These are the people that have to do it. So that's contributing to that restricted inventory. And like I said before, with that restricted inventory, these prices cannot soften with this low of homes. I mean, we're seeing it. I just had an agent last week. She said, man, I had a house put on the market Friday. By Monday, we had 18 offers. We sold it for $35,000 over list price. Waived the price on contingency, everything. But I'm seeing it over and over and over right now because, again, these people have to buy. They need to be in a house, right? They're going to go shopping and there's nothing to buy all over it. So,
well, that begs the question, should I buy a house right now is the topic of today's show.
Yeah.
To answer that question, you have to ask another question, and that is, what is the alternative?
Yeah. Renting.
So, like you said, you could just hole up with your parents.
Yeah.
Live there. And, especially like you said, if you're getting to live there rent free. But I talked to a client today who has, he had a tragedy and, so now he's a single dad and he's living with his folks with the two kids. And he's like, but you know what, man, this is not conducive to, happiness.
Right.
At some point, the familiarity is it causes problems.
Definitely.
If you could coexist for a while with more than one family living under the same roof, great. But most people don't really, you kind of want your space.
Sure. Yeah.
And so he's just like, let's get a list together and go out there and look at houses because the alternative is to live at home with mom and dad, and that hasn't been working out.
Right.
Or you could find somewhere to rent. So that would be option B, to find somewhere to rent.
Yeah.
And the rental market is also tight.
Yep.
So if we had a loose rental market where there was, tons of places you could go and you could get a good house and you could get it for 12 or $1,300 and, be happy as clams. I may have a different outlook on the options
Right.
because the cash flow would be so much better in your favor to rent.
Right.
But my goodness, Mike, to even have something decent, it's $2,500
Yeah.
to rent a house. I would argue it makes more sense to pay $3,000 a month for something you own
Right.
than $2,500 for something you don't.
Definitely.
That $500 is, you could kind of just chalk that up, that's an added expense to your cash flow that's going towards your family's estate because you're investing in your future. And then what other alternative is there other than live at home with mom and dad or just rent?
Just rent. Yeah, that's it. Just move in with somebody else. But like you said, you want your own space eventually. So sooner or later, that's what you want. And here's the other thing that's interesting. And I hear this a lot right now too. These people are looking and they think they're interested. They can buy, but they're, we're going to wait because again, they want to wait for the market to correct, or they think the prices are going to come down, whatever it may be. I had this conversation with an agent and their buyer the other day, and I said, listen, if you want to sit on the sidelines because you're getting discouraged, right? Because again, you're not seeing the homes that you want out there. I just tell them, look, don't stop shopping because there is going to be a house come up that you want, and you better be ready to jump on it. So don't go out and buy that car. and ruin your opportunity. Don't go out there and mess it up because it's going to happen. Homes come on the market every single day. 10, 20 houses every day come on the market. There's going to be something out there. Just don't stop shopping because, again, when you're ready to pick this up in 6 months and everybody's on the bandwagon, everybody's on the championship team run, that's what happens. The bandwagoners, right? I'm not a fan until they get to the finish. Well, now we're all in that same boat when that interest rate drops, and now everybody's buying. Now we're pushing prices up. We're going to get a little deal on the interest rate, but now we're going to pay way more on the price of the house. So it's just like, don't stop shopping right now. This is literally a great time to buy today before everybody else does, because there's no doubt about it. This rate gets into the fives, which they predict at 5.8 by the end of the year is what they're thinking. 5.8, and now look at the gap from a 3.5% interest rate to a 5.5, 5.8%. That gap is way more palatable than a 3.5 to a 7%. That's
Right.
what is that spread? Where is that tipping point of the spread? And it's probably going to be in the mid fives. I mean, these guys, you know what? Hey, 3.5, 5.5, let's do it. It makes sense. Payment's not going to be that crazy.
So let's say, and I just pulled up your Chapman chart here again. And by fourth quarter of 23, we're looking at, mid to high fives, which
Right.
would be, about 3/4 of a point lower than it is today.
Right.
And now affordability becomes more realistic for the consumer. You're talking about literally probably $200-300 in payment or something like that.
Right. And it gets up to 60% affordability. And here's what they say. They say this isn't the end all, but what they're saying by the end of the year here, they think this is the worst it's going to get, what we're in right now. They believe that this is the bottom of the market, which is nothing, right? I mean, it's not that crazy. It's still a great market. Nothing like it was 2 years ago.
And historically, Chapman, go back 10 or 15 or even 20 years, their accuracy has been what?
They're number one. They're number one in the nation, ahead of Bear Stearns, Morgan Stanley, B of A, SCLA, USC, ahead of all these forecasters. I had the list here before. So these are the number one forecasters of the gross domestic product in the nation. And like I said, their forecasts, I mean, you should see the groups that come to these things. It's all the big developers, all the big builders. These guys all hang on this guy's presentation. They do Orange County forecast, they do Inland Empire and LA County forecast. And they have a huge team of their economic team that's there at the university. But that's where I went to. I went to the actual university for this one, for the Orange County forecast.
So if their prediction holds true over the next 6 months, you're going to see the rates finally soften to the mid fives, which is historically probably about where they should be anyway, right? And what that's going to do is cause a stimulus in activity vis-a-vis sellers making their decision to actually list their homes for sale.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to push some people up because, again, what's going to happen is these prices are going to have to continue to rise. And remember, these people only lost about 10% of equity over this last, 15 months, which is really not a lot, right? The prices did come down, but then they've already shot back up. So I think we're down maybe 4 or 5%.
Well, you take my house, for example. Okay. I bought my house in the spring of 2020.
Yeah.
In fact, it was March of 2020. Do you happen to remember what happened in March of 2020?
Pandemic announcement. Get home, stay home. You better really like this house because you're going to live in it.
Well, and we had to sell our other one to buy this one. And we were under a ton of pressure because the people who were selling this house were moving out of state.
Yeah.
And there was some talk back then. I don't know if you remember, they were talking about, look, we're going to shut everything down for 2 weeks and nobody can go anywhere.
Yeah.
This was all like right when this was coming down with the pandemic. And we were dealing with, I remember feeling the pressure on my chest. I was worried sick about it all.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I didn't have anything to be worried about. But at the time, we were just scared to death.
Yeah.
And the exact opposite of what everybody feared would happen in terms of the housing market happened, where over the next 24 months from March of 2020 to March of 2022,
Right.
would we have like a 30%?
Yeah.
I mean, it was incredible number, right? Like
Yeah.
15%
Massive.
annually
Yep.
in equity that shot up. And so I'm just going to use round figures. Let's say I gained $100,000 in equity in those
Yep.
2 years. And then 23 comes, the last quarter of 22 to now here, the first 2 quarters of 23, you saw a softening a little bit
Yeah.
of equity by 10%. And instead of having 100 grand in equity, now I only have 90. That's not the end of the world, right?
Right. Exactly.
But here's the thing that I want you to speak to, because it's a little bit of a catch 22. You're saying that if the rates soften, it will stimulate more activity to motivate people who want to move up or transition with their housing, or
Yep.
either move up, move down, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe we'd have a little bit of a loosening of supply, but at the same time, the homes become more affordable. The buyers can spend more, which is going to drive prices up. So you have a little bit of competing factors there, right?
Yep.
So can you
Um,
kind of walk us through that and explain, I mean, I guess you saw that a little bit with with the hyper low numbers back in 2021
yeah.
at 3%. That stimulated a bunch of activity on listings, but the pricing went out of, I mean, you're talking about 10, 20, $30,000 over the list.
Right. Yeah. So that's the thing too. Is like this. The house. Let's say the house was valued at 500,000. What did it sell for? It sold for 550. Right, with all the multiple offers. So I think that's what's going to shake these sellers loose as they start to see that equity gain again, and they start to get that number there, and they see the demand just like last time. They go, you know what? If I don't have to put $50,000 in this house, I don't need to put that new roof again. I don't need to fix the landscaping and the drywall patches. Let's put it on the market, and I'm still going to get top dollar, and I'm probably going to get over top dollar again. Right? That's what was happening. That was the madness that was happening. So I think with this lower interest rate and that gap between a 3.5 and let's say an upper 5, and that's what these guys predict. They think that is probably the threshold or the spread
Oh,
that these sellers are going to get comfortable with going, you know what? If we do sell this house, now I want to sell. Right? Again, we're trying to get into the people that want to sell, not the people that have to sell, because that's all we have today. That's why we have such low transactions. The people that have to, the people that want to, we think we're going to be able to get into those people a lot faster if this interest rate comes down. But like we keep saying, if you wait to buy, then when everybody else is buying, these prices are going to keep shooting up. You're going to have to overpay for homes. You're going to have to come in and waive appraisal contingencies and come in with the extra cash. It's going to happen. We're already seeing it now at an interest rate in the high sixes. Imagine if this thing drops a percent, right? The demand is going to get crazier. And what if it comes into the low fives? Who knows? We know it's going to get more of a demand. We just hope it's going to shake these sellers loose too, with this amount of equity and hopefully some overbidding, because those are the only guys we have. We don't have massive amounts of new construction. We need that, but we don't got it. Most of my spec builders they're trying to ramp up right now, but it seems like it's kind of shaky, right? The data just came out that they think this rate's going to drop here by the end of the year, and the affordability is going to shoot up. Once people start hearing that, maybe these builders will start building some more spec homes. But these actual track builders, they can't build enough homes. They're just not there.
yeah.
That's the inventory we get.
This is a little bit of a digression from the topic, but what I wish the government would do is use public money to stimulate SFR construction.
Yeah.
They could come alongside these big builders and help underwrite some of their expenses vis-a-vis infrastructure.
Yeah.
And relax some of the regulation, to get homes built. But that's Brian's opinion. So
Well,
what I would like,
think about that too. If you think about that aspect, I mean, think about what the Joshua tree has done to us up here, in the high desert. I mean, everything's got a Joshua tree on it, and so that's even restricting more new construction. So
right.
the bottleneck that we're in up here, it's like, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's almost like, I don't know, man. It's almost like 100% guarantee these prices ain't going to come down, because we can't build new homes because we get this Joshua tree restriction. So without new inventory, we're waiting for these sellers to move. These sellers don't want to move. We're going to have low inventory. If we continue to have low inventory, we're going to continue to stabilize minimum and probably go up, right? I mean,
It's
that's
a supply side issue.
big time.
So, a couple of more things. What about the seller today that would like to transition?
Yeah.
Maybe they bought a starter home 5 or 6 years ago. They have 100 or $125,000 in equity in their house. Whatever situation in their life has changed, they would like something nicer, newer, in a better neighborhood,
Yeah.
or perhaps they've got a bigger house and they'd like to, downsize. What about them and their reluctance to make their move?
So it's funny. I talk about that a few times too. Is if you think about when you're young or when I'm young, anybody that you know really, and if you've got a starter home, obviously you're probably a younger generation. You're always, I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know what the percentage is, but it's got to be close to 100%. You're always going to make more money, right? As you get older. Usually, I mean, I don't know, 99% of the time, I don't know what it is. But if that's the case, you're going to make more money. You put down what you have to put down on that house. Keep that extra money, whatever it is. Maybe you put down 50,000. Keep the 100 grand in your bank account. Take that higher interest rate today, because you know darn well you're going to be able to refi that thing here coming up. And you have to hold it for 6 months, right, to be able to before you can refinance it. That puts you in the wheelhouse of a lower interest rate, right? If that's the case and everything happens like that, you're going to make more money. Interest rate reducing is pretty spot on, and you could stomach that payment. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit. It's going to be big. It's going to be a higher payment. There's no doubt. But like I said, it's either you pay a little bit higher payment today on interest rate, or you're going to pay a lot more for that house later. Refinance.
Well, okay, so let's say you could refi to a lower rate 9 months from now.
Yeah.
Just okay. So first quarter of 24.
Yeah.
And the interest rates are at 5.5, and you had to pay 6.5 or 6 3/4, whatever it is today.
Yeah.
And the difference in payment is just for round figures, let's just say it's $500.
Right.
So 9 times 5 is 45.
Yeah.
Right? I went to Sperry High School, but I think I got that right.
Yeah.
Right? 9 times 5 is 45. So it's $4,500 that you're going to put up hedging. Like, right, you're risking it. The $4,500, gambling that a year from now or 9 months from now you're going to be able to refi and get that payment down lower. But here's the thing, you're probably buying the house for less than $4,500 cheaper than what it's going to be a year from now, or more than $4,500 cheaper. So in other words, a year from now, it could be a $10,000 or $15,000 adjustment on the
Yeah.
pricing.
Like I said, that guy just paid 35 grand over today or last week. He just paid 30.
Yeah. And you're more likely to have a seller work with you on a contingency
For sure.
today than in a hotter market where there's more buyer demand because of the lower rates. So right now, if you're going to make the purchase contingent on the sale of your home, with a little bit lower activity because of the higher rates,
Yeah.
you may have a seller that's like, hey man, we'll work with you. We'll wait for you to sell your house. Whereas 9 months from now, it may be a challenge. I mean, a real challenge. Look, man, I was working with sellers on this stuff, and I know you're all too familiar with all this stuff. Yet I don't know anybody. I literally don't know anybody, brokers, agents, or anybody that has their finger on the pulse like you do.
Yeah.
And I was telling people, look, we got to get your house listed. We need to get a buyer into your house, and we need to have removed contingencies before anybody's going to take you seriously.
Yeah. Definitely.
And you may even offer in that scenario not contingent on the sale of your home.
Yeah.
Gambling that within that first 3 weeks that we're going to close on your house, and you're going to have to figure out where you're going to live for 3 weeks.
Yeah. For sure.
It's tough.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, the $4,500 that we just mentioned looks awfully cheap.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, $4,500, but I'm going to buy the house at a lower price. I'm going to have the convenience of being able to stay in my home, and so on and so forth. So what I think we did this together last time. Usually I kind of close out the segment with the guest and do the market update, but I like to do it with you.
Yeah.
So let's pull up this week's market update, and you can kind of chime in on this.
Yeah.
So this is this morning, and we're dealing with Victorville, Apple Valley, Hesperia, Adelanto, Phelan, Oak Hills, and Hellendale. These are the 7 municipalities that we're dealing with on this data.
Yeah.
So speak to this first number: 339 homes sold over the last 30 days.
And you imagine, I mean, just like I said, think about if there was more inventory on the market, I think it would probably be closer to 500, 550 homes. We're only selling that low of homes because there's nothing out there to buy, you know.
Right. So we usually sell 5,500 to 6,000 homes in our market. Which would, average out to be about 500 per month. It's usually slower between November and January, and then it starts to uptick. And by this time, we're usually selling somewhere close to 600 homes a month.
Yeah, we should be. Yeah, the inventory.
But at 339, and I said this last week, but I'm hearing from you, you're reiterating it. This is a low number. We're not selling a lot of houses because there's not a lot of houses for sale.
Right. Exactly.
Hard for houses to sell when there's no houses for sale.
Yeah. Nothing else to buy.
This is the number 2, brother. Median sale price of those homes, 420 grand.
Yeah. And like I said, and like these guys are saying, they think, hey, this is, by the time we get to December, you're going to look back and say, okay, the worst is behind us. That number is not going to go down anytime soon. And like they predict for even all of Southern California, they do not think this price is going to fall. They think this thing is going to continue to rise because we're all seeing it. It's happened all over the different states too. Low inventory, demand is there, overbidding. And I said it earlier this year, I think February, March, I said, hey, look, as we're seeing this lower inventory, we're starting to see people start to bid up a little bit, 2, 3. All of a sudden, the first thing to go away was the
concessions,
right? Yeah. Buyer closing costs. No, we're not going to have that. That already went away. Right now, we're starting to see the overbidding, maybe $1,000, $2,000. Like I gave that example, $35,000. So we're starting to see that. So if that continues to happen, and we see this overbidding happening, the price is only going to go up. There's no doubt.
1 year ago, same period, May 26 to June 26, 442 homes.
Yeah.
At a median sale price of 430,000.
Yeah.
So these are the 2 numbers that, again, I'm not a mathematologist. I'm not I'm not a numbers genius, but I can add 2 plus 2.
Yeah.
So we sold 23% less homes. So you would think by looking at that number, you're like, oh, well, we sold 23% less homes. There was a softening of demand. So gosh, the pricing must have come down 23%.
Right.
But the pricing only came down 2.3%.
Yep. Exactly.
And this is where I'm like, oh boy.
And that's what these people don't understand if they're not in the industry, or they're not following you, not following me. They're following, the agent that's just out there looking for a deal. They're not, and that's what's so frustrating. It's like, you're on it. You know the data. And these people that are trusting these agents, that I wouldn't let some of these people bag my groceries, you know what I mean? But it's like, you're advising these people on the most critical purchase of their whole life. And you're not leaning on somebody that's looking at this market intelligently. It's just crazy.
Well, if I had a magic wand, I would rather see our median sale price at 375.
For sure.
I would rather see us move 500 to 600 homes in a month.
Yeah.
And I would rather see the active listings here, 597. This is a number that's a punch in the gut.
Yeah.
All right. Do you remember 2012? I remember you coming into our office, because back in those days, it was before we had SkySlope or whatever, and you guys would make your rounds or whatever.
Yeah.
And we ran into each other in the office. I remember where we were in that back office where, my mom and I used to work back there.
Yeah.
And you say, can you believe it? We're under 1,000 homes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was 2012. Well, I remember what happened then is because we sold the bank-owned homes that the spigot got shut off on the number of assignments we were getting, the foreclosures coming to market. And all of a sudden, because that's where our inventory came from back in those days, was foreclosures. You didn't have a lot of equity sellers. and it just things started tightening up pretty fast. We got under 1,000 homes. Mike, we're under 600 homes.
I know. Crazy.
Bro, I mean, under 1,000. We'd love to have 1,000.
For sure. And that's
I
what I'm
mean,
saying
it's
about these agents being out of touch is that you imagine right now going shopping with a realtor. You go, you know what? We're going to underbid all these houses that you like to see. We're going to keep underbidding because there's plenty of inventory out there. There's deals to be had. 8 months ago, yes. Not today. And that's the frustration that I have seeing some of these agents out there dealing with these buyers or sellers and not giving them up to date advice. That's frustrating.
mm,
You know what I mean? And I see it
yeah.
happen all the time. I see these offers come in $20,000, $30,000 under list price today. And like, who is advising this person? What are they? That was 8 months ago. That has nothing to do with today. You know?
And then what about this number? We have 600 homes in escrow.
Yeah, those things. It's funny. Every deal that we seem that comes down the pipe these days, man, it's got some hair on it. You know, the divorce, probate. That's the thing too. I think there's a lot of probates out there that are going to take that are going to keep a lot of these things in escrow a little longer than they should be. You know, but hey, that's a lot of homes in escrow. That's a lot of activity happening. There's people out there.
Well, it's almost 2 months of supply if this 339 number, even though that's low, but you're talking about almost doubling the absorption rate in escrow,
Yeah,
which actually that in terms of activity is a healthy ratio. You like to see about 2 months
yeah. And if those
of
were closing
supply.
in a 30, 45 day would be awesome. But the problem is those are closing probably 60 to 75 days out.
Oh, gotcha. When you'd like to see about 4 months of supply here in the
Yeah.
active listings. I mean, when I first started Carol Yule, she said 6 months of supply is a healthy number.
Yep. Yep.
But in that scenario, pricing is really gonna be stable,
Yep.
and you're gonna see a lot of seller concessions. And for the layperson that doesn't know what that means, it means when the seller is going to give part of their equity in their house to the buyer to help them buy the house.
Right.
And oftentimes maybe a concession in the way of performing repairs on the house. But this is, look, I just follow the numbers. I don't
Yeah.
have I don't have a bias like this is what I want the market to say. And
Yeah.
we just want people to buy houses because this is what I do for a living and it's how I get a commission. That's not my purpose
Yeah.
in sharing these numbers. I'm just giving you the numbers. And what makes my stomach a little bit tight, and remember I told you I wish if I had the magic wand, I'd be like, oh, it'd be nice if it was 375. It'd be nice if the rates were around 4.5. It'd be nice if we had about 1,600 homes on the market. I don't have a magic wand. I can't make the market do what I want it to do. I would much rather sell, 75 houses in any given year at a median sell price of 375 than 40 houses at a median sell price at 4.25.
Right.
you know,
Definitely.
from a business standpoint. And also just from the consumer, it would be nice for them
Yep.
able to do something, but it is what it is. I'll pull it up again. I'm looking at gridlock here.
For sure.
I'm like,
Total.
what are we? Because if this number improves, then this number is not going to improve.
Right. And the
This
thing
number,
is, too, people got to realize too is that the activity that's happening up here on the job side of it, like I said, we got the BNSF deal. That thing is happening with projected to 20,000 jobs. I'm going to put out a video today talking about the whole high-speed rail deal that from here to Vegas. These guys purchased it obviously a year and a half ago. They pulled out $155 million already, and then they just refied it again a couple months ago for another $122 million. They got almost $300 million in funding, and they got bipartisan agreement to, I think, issue some bonds for this thing. They believe this thing's happening. We have these big transactions happening in North Apple Valley on the industrial side. Big Lots just sold for $155 million. That whole distribution warehouse. We got all these other transactions at 15 million, 22 million, 25 million. Major dollars running through this valley right now. So for us here locally in the high desert, I mean, I don't see the supply getting any looser anytime soon with the amount of job activity that's being created here. Again, we have 700, 600 homes on the market, 500 homes on the market, and we got projected thousands of jobs coming in these next three to 5 years. Like, where are these houses going to come from? I mean, who knows? But all we do know is that the
Hmm.
softening is not going to happen anytime soon, especially up here with massive job growth.
All right, to recap, here's the highline. Should I buy a house now? The answer is 1000% if you are ready, willing, and able.
Yeah,
Now is the time. And the
now,
reason is because market conditions are not going to improve. Even if the rates soften, the prices go up. So what would be a better decision is to buy with a higher rate now and then hold out once you have the house for a lower rate and refi. That makes more sense.
definitely.
All right, my brother. We'll do it again. I mean, we'll just mark it down. What's today? June 26th. So we'll just schedule for like September 26th
Yeah, do it again.
and see if if
See what
the
happens.
things we're talking about come true.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for letting
You
me
are the
talk.
man. Your incredible wealth of knowledge, and I'm better for having you as a friend and colleague.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Have a fabulous afternoon. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, man.
There he is, folks, the incomparable Mike Arias. There isn't anybody I know or talk to that has a better handle on the housing market, at least here locally, and for that matter, regionally. And he could even speak to the national trends based on the data that he gets. And I hope that the information that we've discussed today is helpful for you. We're going to close out today's broadcast with our weekly segment called Check This Out. Before we do that, we ask you to please like, share, and subscribe to this channel and to our podcast. Helps us get the information out, help more people to win in life and in business and in real estate. So check this out. I am a Starbucks person, as you guys know, and one of the things I love about Starbucks is their mobile app, where I can, push my order through, and my drink is waiting for me when I get there. It saves me time. I can be precise. I don't have to deal with somebody at the register. I don't have to wait in a line. I love it. And I had often wished about, gosh, I wish there were more places that had similar type offerings that Starbucks does. And I discovered, if you like, I'm not super crazy about McDonald's, but I can tell you this: they have like the best breakfast of all the fast food places, and they actually have a really cool mobile app where you can go on, order your stuff. You don't have to, fool with dealing with whoever the person is at the window making you can all put it in precisely in the app. You can pay for it at the app, and then it'll generate a code. And then when you get to the drive-through, well, you can do it three ways. You can go in, sit down, they'll bring the food to you, or you can sit in the parking lot, they'll bring the food to you. But if you're going to run through the drive-through, you just give them the code that they give you. They say, "Are you using the mobile app?" And you're like, "Yep, here's my code." And you drive through, and bam, they have your order, and it's all precise and ready to go and already paid for. It's really pretty cool. And then on top of all of that, they've got like bonus points where you can get cheaper food or free food or whatever. It's pretty cool. You can download it from the App Store in your Google Play or in Apple. All right, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us this week on today's edition of the Brian Hirsch Show. We are serving your dreams, helping you win in real estate and in life. And until next week, we'll talk to you soon.